Take that piece of tin off your chest. This is a federal courtroom, not a costume party. The judge's words dripped with venom. He didn't know he was speaking to a 3-star general, or that she was recording everything. The air in Federal Courtroom 3B was thick and stagnant, a stale cocktail of old paper, cheap lemon-scented cleaner, and the faint, anxious sweat of a dozen lives hanging in the balance. Dust motes danced in the weak shafts of sunlight that managed to pierce the grimy, wire-meshed windows, illuminating the worn oak of the pews and the tired faces of the people seated in them. It was a place designed to project power, but all it managed was a suffocating sense of decay. Into this mausoleum of justice stepped General Evelyn Harper. She moved with an economy of motion that spoke of years of discipline, her presence instantly altering the room's gravitational pull. She wasn't loud or ostentatious, but the quiet dignity of her bearing drew every eye. Her Air Force dress uniform, a deep, authoritative blue, was tailored to perfection, a stark contrast to the drab grays and browns of the courtroom. On her shoulders, 3 silver stars gleamed with a cold, hard light, even in the dimness. Her dark hair was pulled back into a severe, immaculate bun, every strand in place, framing a face that was a study in controlled composure. Her eyes, the color of dark coffee, missed nothing. Pinned discreetly to her left breast was the Air Force Cross. It wasn't a large medal, but its intricate silver design, centered with a golden eagle, seemed to hold more weight and history than the entire room combined. She was not a defendant. She was not a witness in the traditional sense. She was an advocate. She was there to offer silent, unyielding support for the family of Private Carlos Reyes, a 19-year-old airman who had posthumously saved his entire crew by manually releasing a jammed landing gear during an emergency in Helmand Province, sacrificing himself in the process. Now, a bureaucratic snag, a cruel technicality in the paperwork, was being used by a powerful insurance corporation to deny his young widow his death benefits. At the bench, looking down from his elevated throne, sat Judge Arthur Graves. He was a man who seemed to have been curated by time to fit his surroundings, pale, thinning gray hair combed over a freckled scalp, and cheap gold-rimmed glasses perched on a nose that was perpetually pointed down at the world. For 27 years, his voice, a reedy rasp like sandpaper on dry wood, had been the final word on thousands of lives. He scanned his docket, and his eyes landed on General Harper. A flicker of something, annoyance, perhaps contempt, tightened the corners of his thin lips. "We will now hear the motion in Reyes vs. Patriot Alliance Group," he announced, then fixed his gaze on Harper. "And before we begin, the woman standing in the gallery, you." Every head turned. The air crackled. "Yes, you," Graves repeated, gesturing vaguely with a bony finger. "The uniform. Remove that shiny bauble from your chest. Immediately." A low murmur rippled through the spectators, a sound like dry leaves skittering across pavement. General Harper's posture did not change. Her gaze remained locked on the judge, steady and unblinking. When she spoke, her voice was calm, measured, yet it carried an authority that resonated in the bones. "Your Honor, my name is General Evelyn Harper, United States Air Force. And this, shiny bauble, is the Air Force Cross." Graves snorted, a wet, dismissive sound. "I don't care if it's a blue ribbon from the county fair, General. This is a federal courtroom, not a military parade. Your decorations are irrelevant here. Take it off, or I'll have you escorted out for contempt." The insult hung in the air, thick and foul. He had not only dismissed the medal, he had dismissed her service, and the memory of the young man she was there to honor. Harper's voice remained impossibly calm. "With all due respect, Your Honor, its relevance is precisely why I am here. It was awarded in memory of Private Reyes, the young man whose widow you are about to hear from. I wear it for him, and for every man and woman who didn't come home. It is not an ornament. It is a testament." She could feel the tide turning, the subtle shift in the room's atmosphere. This was the moment she had anticipated, the moment her 6-month investigation had been leading toward. Her fingers, steady and deliberate, brushed against her collar. Nestled there, disguised as a standard-issue metallic rank insignia, was a tiny, state-of-the-art 4K video and audio recorder. Its lens was no bigger than a pinprick. Its microphone was currently capturing every syllable of Judge Graves' escalating prejudice with crystal clarity. Her mind was a whirlwind of data, 23 cases, 34 families, years of biased rulings. But on the surface, she was a statue of military grace. Her internal monologue was cold and precise. Phase 1 initiated. He's taking the bait. His arrogance is even greater than the profile suggested. Perfect. Judge Graves' face, already pale, flushed a blotchy, angry red. I will not have my authority questioned in my own courtroom, he thundered, his voice cracking. He pointed a trembling finger at the bailiff standing near the defendant's table. Officer. Escort this woman out. Now. The bailiff, Mike Kowalski, was a broad-shouldered man whose ill-fitting uniform couldn't quite conceal the coiled tension of his muscles. He was a Marine veteran, a fact evident in the faded Semper Fi tattoo peeking out from under his right sleeve. His eyes, which had seen the horrors of Fallujah, now darted between the sputtering judge and the statuesque general. He took a half-step forward, then hesitated, his body language a war of conflicting duties. Your Honor, I. Kowalski began, his voice a low rumble of discomfort. He had sworn an oath to the court, but he had also sworn an oath to his country, an oath embodied by the woman standing before him. You will do your job or you will find another one. Graves shrieked, his composure shattering. Beside General Harper, Sophia Reyes, a young woman made old by grief, began to sob. She clutched the general's arm, her knuckles white. General, please, she whispered, her voice thick with tears. Just take it off. They've already taken my Carlos. I can't lose you too. We need you. Harper placed a reassuring hand over the widow's, her touch firm and warm. She felt the immense weight of the young woman's desperation, a familiar burden for any commander. She leaned in, her voice a murmur meant only for Sophia. Courage, Sophia. There are moments when stepping back is a greater disrespect than standing firm. Trust me. Stay strong. Across the courtroom, in the polished leather seats reserved for corporate counsel, Alan Wexler of the Patriot Alliance Group held his smartphone to his ear, his back partially turned. He watched the scene unfold with the detached interest of a biologist observing insects. Yes, sir, the situation is escalating as projected, he whispered into the phone. The target is refusing to comply. She seems entirely unintimidated. He paused, listening. Understood. Proceed with the public humiliation. We'll let Graves do the dirty work. It's what we pay him for. The line of dialogue, though unheard by most, confirmed Harper's deepest suspicions. This wasn't just one man's bigotry. This was a coordinated strategy. Unseen by Wexler, and unnoticed by the fuming judge, another key player was documenting the scene. In the back row of the gallery sat Dr. Juliana Lim. To the casual observer, she was just an impeccably dressed Asian woman, perhaps a law professor, tapping notes onto a tablet. In reality, she was one of the nation's foremost social psychologists, an expert in judicial bias and behavioral analysis. General Harper had personally and discreetly invited her here, knowing that her testimony, as a neutral and highly respected academic, would be unassailable. Dr. Lim's fingers flew across the screen, her notes not just a transcript, but a clinical dissection of Judge Graves' every word, gesture, and facial tic. She noted the micro-expressions of contempt, the dismissive hand waves, the subtle shift in tone when addressing the general versus the white corporate lawyer. She was building a scientific case study in real time. General Harper saw it all. She saw the bailiff's crisis of conscience. She saw the corporate lawyer's cold calculation. She saw Dr. Lim, a silent, powerful ally, gathering the objective data that would soon become indispensable. The pieces were moving on the board, each one responding to the pressure she was applying. Everything was falling into place. Judge Graves leaned over the bench, his knuckles white as he gripped the polished wood. He felt a vein throbbing in his temple. It wasn't just the uniform or the medal, it was the woman wearing it. It was the way she stood there, an immovable object of quiet confidence, her authority seeming to emanate from her very core. It was a direct challenge to his own. For 27 years, he had been the sole source of power in this room. He knew how to handle people like her, the ones who came in with what he saw as an unearned sense of entitlement. He had his methods, subtle and effective, for putting minorities, especially black women, back in what he considered their proper place. A condescending tone, a feigned confusion of their name, a deliberate misinterpretation of their argument. It had always worked. But this woman was different. She wasn't yielding. She wasn't breaking. "General," he sneered, drawing the word out as if it tasted foul. "Your last chance. Remove the medal, or you will be held in contempt of court and spend the night in a cell. And spare me any more stories of heroism. I know your type." An icy silence descended upon the courtroom. Even Alan Wexler paused his whispering. In the gallery, the fists of several older veterans clenched, their faces tight masks of fury. In the second row, a young freelance journalist named Liam O'Connor, who had come to cover the insurance case, felt his heart pound. He knew, with the primal instinct of a born reporter, that the real story was happening right now. He had been discreetly recording audio on his phone, but now, he carefully angled his body and activated the video recorder on a pen-shaped camera clipped to his notepad. He had no idea if he was witnessing a tragedy or a triumph, but he knew he was witnessing history. General Harper met the judge's hateful glare not with anger, but with a calm, almost serene smile that sent an unexpected chill down Graves' spine. She had faced down four-star generals in heated Pentagon briefings, survived IED ambushes in the Afghan desert, and commanded air wings that could level a city. A petty tyrant in a black robe was just another tactical problem to be solved with intelligence and precision. "You know, Your Honor," she said, her voice carrying across the silent room with the clarity of a bugle call, "you're right about one thing. You really do know my type." She paused, letting the words hang in the air, drawing every ounce of attention. "We're the type who built this country. The type who defended it. The type who don't bow down to men who mistake a gavel for a scepter and use their petty power to compensate for their own profound insecurities." That was it. The precise, tactical strike. The verbal IED she had carefully constructed and placed. The effect was instantaneous. Judge Graves' face contorted in a mask of pure rage. The carefully maintained facade of judicial impartiality dissolved into raw, sputtering fury. With a guttural roar, he didn't just bang his gavel, he threw it. The wooden mallet flew across the room, clattering against the wall behind the witness stand. "Arrest her," he screamed, spittle flying from his lips. "Arrest that woman. Contempt of court. Sedition. Get her out of my sight. Jail." It was in that moment of complete, uncontrolled rage that General Harper knew she had won. He had just detonated the trap himself. Every word was recorded. Every gesture was documented. His pathetic, tyrannical meltdown was being captured in high definition from 3 different angles. The arrogant man who thought he was breaking a disobedient woman had just publicly, irrevocably, and spectacularly hanged himself. Bailiff Kowalski approached General Harper, his movements slow and reluctant, his hands visibly shaking. "General, I'm so sorry. Orders are orders." "I understand completely, officer," Harper replied, her voice gentle. She turned and presented her wrists, a gesture not of submission, but of strategic compliance. "You're just doing your duty." As the cold steel of the handcuffs clicked shut, Judge Graves watched with a smug, triumphant satisfaction. Finally. He had broken her. He had put the arrogant woman in her place. He muttered to his clerk, "See. That's how you command respect. Hierarchy. He was still savoring his victory when the courtroom doors swung open with a force that made everyone turn. It was not a lawyer. It was an army. Leading the procession was General Samuel Sam Drake, retired 4-star Air Force Chief of Staff, now one of the most feared civil rights attorneys in the country. His silver hair, ramrod posture, and piercing blue eyes commanded instant respect. He wasn't just Harper's lawyer, he was her mentor, the man who had taught her how to fight battles both on and off the battlefield. Behind him, the sight made Judge Graves' jaw go slack. Two stern-faced individuals in dark suits flashed badges, federal prosecutors from the Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division. Following them was the chief investigative reporter from National News Network, Liam O'Connor's boss, with a professional camera crew in tow. Dr. Juliana Lim walked with them, her tablet held like a shield, her expression one of grim purpose. And finally, a woman whose face was known from C-SPAN and every major news network, Congresswoman Margaret Chandler, a high-ranking, no-nonsense member of the House Armed Services Committee. Graves stumbled back a step, his face draining of all color. What is the meaning of this circus?" he stammered, his voice suddenly weak and thin. General Drake strode to the center of the room, his presence dwarfing the judge's bench. He offered a smile that held no warmth, only the promise of a reckoning. "Judge Graves," he began, his voice booming through the silent courtroom. "I'm afraid your hearing will have to be postponed. It seems it has just become a federal investigation." He gestured to the prosecutors. "These are agents from the Department of Justice. They have some questions for you. Specifically, about the 34 cases involving minority veterans whose benefits you've denied over the past 3 years." Graves' eyes widened in panic. 34. How could they know the exact number? In a holding cell down a short hallway, General Harper sat perfectly still on a hard metal bench. She wasn't worried. She closed her eyes, recalling her final planning session with Sam Drake just last night. "Eve," he had said, his voice grave, "men like Graves build their world on the assumption that their power is absolute and their victims are silent. To defeat him, you can't just prove him wrong. You have to let him demonstrate, in his own words, exactly who he is to the entire world." She had checked the small, blinking green light on her lapel pin recorder just before Kowalski had led her away. The signal was strong. Her command center, Drake's office across town where a team had been monitoring the live feed, had received everything. When the cell door opened, it wasn't Kowalski. It was Sam Drake. He handed her a key for the cuffs. "Phase 2 complete, General," he said with a grim smile. "The cavalry has arrived." When General Harper and Sam Drake re-entered the courtroom, the scene was one of controlled chaos. The camera crews were setting up, their lenses trained on the judge's bench like a firing squad. Judge Graves sat slumped in his high-backed chair, his face the color of wet ash. The swagger and arrogance were gone, replaced by the terrified look of a cornered animal. "Release General Harper from those restraints immediately," one of the federal prosecutors commanded, her voice cutting through the tension. Bailiff Kowalski, looking immensely relieved, rushed to unlock the handcuffs. "General, I'm so sorry, You did exactly what you had to, officer," Harper said, rubbing her wrists. Her uniform was unwrinkled, her dignity intact. The Air Force cross on her chest seemed to shine brighter than ever. "This is entrapment. A setup." Graves shrieked, finding a last ounce of bluster. "That woman disrespected my court. She refused a direct order." The female prosecutor, Amanda Foster, calmly placed a professional audio recorder on the prosecution's table and pressed a button. "Judge Graves, you are under investigation for a pattern of systematic civil rights violations. Before we play the evidence General Harper has voluntarily provided, let me remind you that anything you say can and will be used against you." She pressed another button. Graves' own voice, amplified, distorted by his rage, filled the courtroom. "Take that piece of tin off your chest. I don't care if it's a blue ribbon from the county fair. I know your type. Arrest her." Sedition. Jail. With each replayed phrase, Graves visibly shrank. The veterans in the gallery shook their heads in disgust. Sophia Reyes watched, tears streaming down her face, but this time, they were tears of vindication. Sam Drake stepped forward and placed a thick binder on the table with a heavy thud. "This is the documentation for those 34 cases, Your Honor. Meticulously compiled by General Harper over 6 months. We have statistical analyses, witness affidavits, and a pattern of behavior so clear a first-year law student could see it. Your rejection rate for minority veterans benefits claims is 73% higher than for identical claims filed by white veterans. A statistical impossibility without bias." Dr. Juliana Lim was sworn in. She presented her behavioral analysis, using slow-motion video captures from the live feed. "Here," she explained, pointing to a large monitor, "we see Judge Graves display classic micro-expressions of contempt. Notice the slight, unilateral raising of the lip corner. And here, his language choice, referring to a decorated general as the woman and her medal as a bauble, is a textbook example of depersonalization and status degradation, common tactics in biased authority figures." Graves looked desperately toward Alan Wexler, his corporate ally, but the lawyer's chair was empty. A quick glance revealed Wexler in the hallway, frantically speaking on his phone, no doubt enacting his company's cut-and-run protocol. The trap was comprehensive, methodical, and inescapable. General Harper walked slowly towards the bench, her footsteps echoing in the stunned silence. She stopped directly in front of the man who had tried to humiliate her. She did not raise her voice. She didn't have to. "Judge Graves," she said, her voice a blade of cold, quiet steel. "I did not set a trap for you. I simply held up a mirror and gave you the time and space to show the world your true reflection. You built your own cage, year after year, with every biased ruling, every whispered slur, every act of arrogance. This isn't my revenge. This is your reckoning." Congresswoman Chandler stepped up to the microphones the news crews had assembled. On behalf of the House Armed Services Committee, she announced, "I am launching a full congressional hearing into the systemic discrimination within the veteran benefits system, starting with this court. All of Judge Thompson's cases for the past 5 years will be reviewed." Prosecutor Foster shut down her recorder. "Judge Graves, you are suspended from your duties, effective immediately, pending the results of a full federal inquiry." As 2 federal marshals, not Kowalski, gently but firmly escorted the wobbling, disgraced judge from his own courtroom, he was met with a wall of camera flashes. His 27-year career hadn't just ended, it had been publicly and brutally executed, and the executioner had been his own prejudice. The fall of Judge Arthur Graves was not a pebble dropped in a pond, it was a boulder, and the ripples changed the entire landscape. The national news coverage was relentless. The general and the judge became a cultural moment, sparking a fierce, nationwide conversation about race, respect, and justice for veterans. Graves' downfall was absolute. He was disbarred, stripped of his pension, and faced a mountain of civil lawsuits. His name became a synonym for judicial disgrace. A year later, a broken man, he was spotted working the night shift at a cavernous, soulless big-box store, his only authority being over which aisles to mop first. His home was foreclosed on to help pay the settlements to the 34 families he had wronged. The Patriot Alliance Group, the insurance giant that had enabled him, was hit with a class-action lawsuit and a federal racketeering investigation. Their stock plummeted, and the corporation ultimately filed for bankruptcy, its executives blacklisted from the industry. Alan Wexler was last seen working as a paralegal for a strip mall injury lawyer. The consequences for the heroes of the story were just as profound. General Evelyn Harper, hailed as a national hero, was nominated by the president to be the next Under-Secretary of Veterans Affairs. Her confirmation was unanimous. Her first act was to draft and champion the Carlos Reyes Act, a sweeping piece of legislation that overhauled the benefits claims process, installing new oversight and transparency to protect against bias. Sofia Reyes, using the substantial settlement she received, established the Reyes Foundation, a non-profit providing free legal aid to military families battling bureaucratic injustices. She had found a new mission born from her pain. Bailiff Mike Kowalski, who testified against Graves, was commended for his integrity. He accepted a promotion to Chief of Courthouse Security for the new, reform-minded federal judge who replaced Graves and finally sought professional help for his PTSD. The journalist, Liam O'Connor, won a Pulitzer Prize for his investigative series, The Gavel and the Guard, which exposed the systemic rot Graves' case had revealed. Dr. Juliana Lim's testimony led to the creation of a permanent judicial oversight committee, which uses behavioral science to monitor and flag potential bias in courts across the country. 6 months after the incident, General Harper, now Under Secretary Harper, stood to give the commencement address at West Point. Her Air Force Cross was pinned to her civilian suit, a symbol not just of battlefield valor, but of civic courage. Power's greatest vulnerability is the arrogance of the person who wields it, she told the sea of young cadets. And the most potent weapon against injustice is not rage. It is meticulous documentation, strategic patience, and unassailable dignity. The story of General Harper and Judge Graves has shown us that one person's courage can indeed dismantle a corrupt system. But it leaves us with a critical question: how many unseen injustices happen every day when the cameras aren't rolling? Have you ever witnessed or experienced a moment of prejudice from someone in power? Share your story in the comments below. We believe every voice deserves to be heard, but please, comment with respect for everyone's experiences. If this story of dignity, strategy, and ultimate justice moved you, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to see it, and subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories of people who turned their greatest challenges into transformative change.